Okay guys, so welcome to a video that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time now, but the timing wasn't right up until recently. And that is to see if I can transform the average workhorse bait caster into a bait finesse worthy reel. And if so, how much it will cost to do so. And I'm going to try to do it the cheapest way possible that anyone could afford. And the reel I'm going to choose to do this experiment on is going to be the Garcia Revo X. And I think this is a perfect choice for this experiment for a few reasons. The first reason is that this is a very popular reel apparently. It's probably one of the best $99 bait casters, at least best selling out there right now. And the second reason is, of course, that it's pretty affordable at $99. And then the third reason is that somehow this reel came in last place in the big $99 bait caster shootout of the 1/8 ounce minnow. Now, it didn't have the heaviest spool out of the lot. Somehow it came in last place with an average of 58.8 feet. So there were some reels there that beat this Revo X that shouldn't have beat it on paper at least. So this is the perfect reel to do this experiment on. Now I've outlined 3 different steps I'm going to take to see if I can transform this Revo X into a decent, capable bait finesse reel. And it's going to be 3 steps that pretty much anyone and everyone can do and can afford. So the first step is to clean out these bearings. And this was the main reason why it took me so long, because I had to complete all the $99 baitcaster battles before I could clean the bearings out of the Revo X. So right now it is almost 8:30, Friday, December the 7th. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bearing removal tool. I'm going to take these bearings out, and then we're going to clean them in acetone. So let me go ahead and see if I can get these bearings out. So the first bearing is right here in the side plate. Now they don't look greased up, but looks can be deceiving. So I'm going to take this little clip out with some tweezers, and I'm going to put this to the side. And I'm going to see if I can pull that bearing out with a Q-tip. There we go. So first bearing gone, and it does feel pretty slick with oil. Let me take this other one out. The other bearing is on the spool right here. So we're going to take the bearing removal tool and we're going to pop that out. Oh, but before we do that, I want to go ahead and actually I'm going to wait. I'm going to weigh the spool without the bearing. Okay, here's the spool pin. Apparently one side is supposed to be narrower than the other, and I believe it was this side because it came out pretty easy. So if you're going to do this, make sure that you push the spool pin out the right way with the thick side going out. Okay, so now we got the spool bearing out. And these are two different size bearings, as you can see. And there's some grease on this one. We're gonna check how well they spin with this bearing tool right here. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's barely spinning at all. So there must be a lot of grease in there. I'm taking a look and it is barely spinning. So it kind of makes sense now that the Revo X kind of did so bad in the test, because the bearings are very well greased. Let's see if this one is any better. This one is a little bit better. It spins for about half a second, maybe almost a full second before it stops, but the other one didn't spin at all. Hopefully you guys can see that. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and weigh this spool now without the bearing. Oops, that scale was broken. Okay, so you're looking at an 18.15 gram spool without the bearing. So that's pretty heavy. Okay. So, of course, the next step is to take these bearings and soak them overnight in acetone. So I'm going to pop them in this jar. I'm going to take this acetone that you can buy anywhere, maybe even have some laying around the house somewhere that you didn't even know, and we're going to pour it in. That should be just enough. This stuff is strong. And now we're going to seal up this jar, and we're going to leave it in there overnight. So I'm going to come back tomorrow and we're going to pull the bearings out and dry them and see if that helped out as far as how much they would spin. Okay guys, so right now it is 6:53 the next day, December the 8th. I'm gonna take these bearings out of the acetone a little early. I think they've been in there long enough. I don't really see any kind of residue or any kind of oil built up. But yeah, I'm gonna take these out. I'm going to dry them under a hair dryer for, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or so, and see how they spin. Okay guys, so I think I've sufficiently dried these ball bearings, and let's do a spin test to see if they've improved any as far as free spin time. So hopefully this will focus. I think that'll work. So hopefully you guys can see that. I can't remember if this was the one that was really gunked up and didn't spin very well. And if it was, it improved a little bit. It went from about a quarter of a second to about a second or half a second improvement. So not very much. That's kind of disappointing. Okay, here's the small bearing. Let's see if this one improved much at all, if any. Okay. So this one spins really good. I think the issue is that these ball bearings are just not that high quality to begin with from the factory, being a $99 budget reel. But this one is spinning pretty good. This one is spinning not that great, but better than it was before. So it looks like the acetone bath helped out a little bit. So hopefully that will help me out in this experiment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the bearings back, and then we'll get to step 2. Okay guys, so I got the bearings put back into the side plate and on the spool, and I should have done a free spool test before I cleaned them, but oh well, hindsight is 2020. So we're gonna do a little bit of a free spool test right now. I got the brakes to minimum, spool tension I'm gonna tighten to just minimize that side to side play. Okay, well, still not that impressive, but we'll have to work with it. Okay, so on to step 2. Okay guys, so to show you just how important step 2 is, I brought the scale out and I filled up the Revo X full of 6-pound mono. And I can't remember what the spool weighed in the initial test, the 6-way $99 baitcaster Finesse shootout, but we're looking at a 30-gram spool when filled with line. Okay guys, so to finish up step 2, we're gonna need a special piece of equipment. And that is a line counter. And the reason I have this is because I'm only going to put 90 feet of line on this spool. And I need to make sure it's only 90 feet. So let's get to it. Bam, 90 feet. So you guys are probably wondering why I only put 90 foot of line on the Revo X. And the answer to that is easy, is to reduce the weight of that spool as much as possible. So in the previous test, the Revo X hit 58.8 feet. Now even the best bait finesse reels today can barely hit around 80 foot when throwing this lure. So I think 90 foot is plenty. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna weigh this spool now, see how much weight it lost. So the previous spool weight filled with line was 30 grams. And let's see how much weight this thing lost now. So with only 30 yards of line, you're looking at 21.3 grams, which is looking pretty promising. And I'm basing that on the spool weights of the TATULA Type R and the CURADO K that went through the 1/8 ounce test. So yeah, I guess I would consider this a success if we can add 10 to 12 to maybe 15 foot of distance to the Revo X's 58.8 foot average from the previous test. So the next step is step 3. Okay guys, so I'm out here on the field and this is where I'm going to introduce to you guys step 3 of this little experiment, and that is going to be the rod. Now this rod shouldn't look familiar to anybody because this is one of those rods you can get off of AliExpress, everyone's favorite place to buy cheap Chinese tackle. And the reason I bought this rod was for 2 reasons. The main reason is that this is only $15. That's right, only $15. And the second reason was that it was rated for lures of 1/32 of an ounce to 1/4 ounce, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, and there were two of them available, a 6-foot and a 5'6". So at $15 a piece, I went ahead and bought both. But I'm using the 6-foot long version for this particular experiment. And it's pretty basic, you know, it's got a really slow, moderate taper. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's a noodle. But I think this is perfect to get the job done, especially since it's only 15 bucks. So when I saw the specs on this rod and the price, I knew I was going to do this test. So let's mount that Revo X on this and see what happens. Okay guys, so I have the Revo X mounted on the rod, and I got the 90 foot of 6-pound mono. I have the spool tension set pretty loose. There's a slight bit of side-to-side play, and the brake setting is here. I don't know what that is since there's no numbers. And then of course we're doing the 1/8 ounce minnow. So let's see what happens. Okay guys, so I'm back from the field, and before we get to these results, I'm going to just recap the first time around when the Revo X went through the 1/8 ounce minnow test. Now, first time around, the spool was filled to capacity with 6-pound mono. It was a full spool. The spool bearings were just like they were from the factory out of the box, so they weren't flushed, and as you can see, they didn't spin very well. And we were using a $200+ specialized JDM Major Craft Corza bait finesse rod that was 6'5" in length, ultralight power with a lure rating of 1/32 of an ounce to 1/4 of an ounce. So with all this, the Revo X averaged 58.8 feet, which came in last place versus the other 5 reels. And my goal was to better that by at least 10 feet. Or in my mind, at least hit a 70-foot average, or this would be a failure in my eyes. So with that being said, when the Revo X used this cheap 6-foot long AliExpress rod that only costed about $15, the flush spool bearings, and the spool filled with only 90 feet or 30 yards of the same 6-pound mono, we averaged 72.8 feet. So a gain of 14 foot over the previous result with that expensive rod. So in my eyes, that's a complete success. And I know 72.8 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're throwing a lure like this, that's actually a long way. And in fact, 72.8 feet beat out the fanboy favorite TATULA SV. Now, of course, the SV had a full spool of line, so take that into consideration. So distance-wise, this test was a success, but that's only one part of the equation. So So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some footage that I took. I actually took this combo fishing, and we're going to talk about how easy it handles these lighter lures.
Okay guys, so now that we've seen on the field that flushing your spool bearings and using a cheap $15 Chinese rod and using just the bare amount of line that you need to make a cast does increase the cast distance, how does that translate in the real world with real fishing? You know, gaining some distance is one thing, but you know, gaining usable distance and, you know, ease of fishing and casting is another thing altogether. So what I did was I decided to actually go take this combo fishing and see what would happen, see how easily the Revo X could handle, you know, these light lures in real fishing situations. As you can probably see, I changed the line out. I used 4-pound fluorocarbon instead of that 6-pound yellow mono, and I actually spooled up 100 feet of line instead of 90 feet like I did with the field test. And the lures that I used were the KAITEC Swing Impact Fat 2.8 inch and the KAITEC Easy Shiner 3 inch, and they were both on a 16th ounce jig head. And as you can see, I was casting them pretty easy. I don't know how far they were going, but I did weigh these lures when I got home, and the Swing Impact Fat weighed 5 grams, so about 3/16 of an ounce, while the Easy Shiner weighed just under 4 grams, so a little bit over 1/8 of an ounce. Now, unfortunately, I didn't think to throw any 1/8 ounce hard baits at the time, but I think the hard bait would have definitely gone farther. Now, as far as ease of casting, once I got used to the rod's taper, it was definitely very easy to cast, and the accuracy was very excellent, especially since that rod was pretty short and you can use basically just one hand to cast. I could just spot a target and cast right to it with no problem. Now, fortunately, I did not catch any fish. No fish wanted to cooperate that day, but I can tell you this much: it handled these lures pretty easily. So if you were creek fishing or creek wading and you know you're throwing lures at this weight range, it'll definitely handle them with no problem. You can fish it just, you know, like a normal rod and reel combo. You don't need any kind of crazy casting gymnastics or anything like that. Now, I did fish this combo next to a very expensive bait finesse reel that I'm going to do a review on soon, and a specialized bait finesse rod. Now, while distance wise it did get blown away, and you know, ease of casting and ease of use, the more expensive combo of course was a lot better than this. That's not the point. The point was to see, you know, if you could turn your, you know, $99 workhorse bait caster into a bait finesse ready creek fishing setup. So, and I think the answer is going to be yes. Here I am fishing this teeny tiny creek. Now, this creek used to have a ton of rock bass in it. Unfortunately, somebody fished them out. But yeah, I think this was a total success. As you can see, I'm just slinging out this little lure with no problem. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the fishing footage.
Okay guys, so before we summarize this video and end it, I just wanted to say that I checked my order history on AliExpress. And it turns out I ordered this rod way back on March 16 of this year. So since it's been so long, unfortunately, this rod is not available anymore. So don't worry though, I am going to be doing a budget bait finesse video series for you guys who want to, get into bait finesse and don't want to spend a ton of money or don't have a ton of money to spend. So be on the lookout for that. Okay, so just to recap everything, you can turn your average workhorse bait caster into a bait finesse reel or bait finesse capable reel for a minimum of $15 if you can find a $15 rod. And if you have, don't have acetone at home, I checked on Walmart, you can buy 16 fluid ounces of acetone for $2.50. So $15 to $17.50 is all it takes to turn the Revo X into a bait finesse creek special or any other reel for that matter. Now, if you guys want to see me do this to another reel, that's got to be a reel that I already have. So if you don't know what reels I have, check out all my videos. And it's got to be a reel that's not going through current testing right now, because I don't want to give it an unfair advantage over the other reels by flushing its bearings. So yeah, let me know in the comments what reel you want to see me do this to next, if you want to see it done. But I hope this helps you guys out, for those of you who want to get into bait finesse, but you just really don't have the budget to do so. And thanks a lot, guys.